Hey everyone, welcome back to the Truly Criminal Network. What does true independence cost? For some, it's merely a financial milestone. For others, like Jennifer Bologna, it became the difference between life and death. On a spring morning in April 2022, Jennifer Bologna stood in her driveway with her daughter Anastasia, preparing for what should have been an ordinary day. The townhouse behind them represented everything Jennifer had fought for: safety, stability, a future free from control. But in pursuing that freedom, Jennifer had unknowingly set in motion a sequence of events that would end in bloodshed. Her ex-husband, Andre Anglin, couldn't accept her independence, and he was about to make sure she never enjoyed it. I'm going to take you inside a story that exposes the devastating reality many face when trying to break free from abusive relationships. A story where restraining orders fail, where warnings go unheeded, and where a mother's determination to build a better life leads to an unthinkable tragedy. Before we continue with Jennifer's story, I need to ask something important. Domestic violence thrives in silence. Each time you subscribe to this channel, you help amplify these stories that need to be told. You help shed light on systemic failures that allow these tragedies to happen repeatedly. If you believe these stories deserve attention, if you want to join a community that examines why these crimes occur and how they could be prevented, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode that might just save someone's life. Your subscription is more than support for this channel. It's standing with victims whose voices have been silenced forever. Jennifer Bologna was 32 years old when her life ended. A woman described by everyone who knew her as exceptionally kind-hearted and generous, despite her own struggles. As a devoted mother to Anastasia and her two younger sons, Jennifer's world revolved around creating a nurturing environment where her children could thrive. She would give you her last dollar if you needed it, one friend later told reporters. Even when she barely had enough for herself and those kids. This generosity extended beyond her immediate family, making her a pillar of support within her community. What made Jennifer's accomplishments particularly remarkable was the adversity she consistently overcame. Her career path revealed her practical nature and determination. Working in tax preparation and credit repair wasn't glamorous, but it demonstrated her resourcefulness and commitment to financial stability. She leveraged these skills not only to support her family, but also to guide clients through their own financial difficulties. Jennifer helped me understand my finances when I was drowning in debt, another friend recalled. She didn't just fix my credit. She taught me how to maintain it. Who does that these days? Who takes that extra time? The pinnacle of Jennifer's independence came when she purchased her townhome at Willow Woods Complex in North Lauderdale, Florida. This wasn't just a real estate transaction. It represented breaking free from years of dependency and abuse. Walking through her own front door, having space that belonged solely to her and her children, symbolized everything she had fought to achieve. But to understand the full significance of that achievement, we need to travel back to where Jennifer's story with Andre Anglin began. They weren't always antagonists. Once, they were high school sweethearts, a love story that began with promise and possibility. Jennifer and Andre met as teenagers, their relationship blossoming into what many around them considered a perfect match. The young couple shared dreams, ambitions, and eventually wedding vows. They started building a family together, welcoming Anastasia and later their two sons. From the outside, their early years together appeared to be the foundation of a loving family. Photos showed smiling faces, holiday celebrations, the ordinary moments that make up a shared life. But photographs capture moments, not the reality that unfolds between them. They seemed so perfect together at first, a family member later reflected. Andre would surprise her with gifts, always talked about how beautiful she was, how lucky he was to have her. What nobody recognized at the time was how these seemingly romantic gestures were laying groundwork for something more insidious. The attention would transform into surveillance. The compliments would become a means of control. The relationship that began with teenage romance would evolve into something unrecognizable. Jennifer's journey from that optimistic young woman to a single mother fighting for independence was neither simple nor straightforward. The transformation happened gradually, imperceptibly at first, then with increasing clarity and urgency. As we continue exploring Jennifer's story, we'll see how small compromises led to major concessions, how initial red flags became glaring warnings, and how a system designed to protect people like Jennifer ultimately failed her in the moments when she needed it most. The transition from high school sweethearts to a household defined by fear didn't happen overnight. For Jennifer and Andre, the shift occurred gradually over years, as control replaced affection and intimidation substituted for respect. Friends who knew the couple during their early marriage noted how Andre's behavior changed after the birth of their first child. What began as protectiveness evolved into possessiveness. Phone calls to check in became demands to know Jennifer's whereabouts at all times. Questions about who she spoke with transformed into accusations. He would question her about every minute of her day. One family member later revealed, "Who called? What did they want? Why did you talk so long?" It was exhausting just watching it happen. By the mid-2010s, the relationship had deteriorated significantly. Andre's dominance manifested in multiple ways, controlling their finances, isolating Jennifer from friends and family, and eventually engaging in physical aggression. The pattern became predictable. Tension would build, an explosive incident would occur, followed by apologies and promises to change that never materialized. When asked why she stayed for so long, Jennifer's sister would later explain, "People think it's simple to leave. It's not. Between the fear, the children, the financial control, Andre made sure she believed she couldn't survive without him." The situation reached a breaking point in 2018, when Jennifer took the courageous step of filing for a restraining order against Andre. Court documents detailed a pattern of threats and emotionally abusive behavior that had become intolerable. This legal action represented Jennifer's first significant attempt to establish boundaries and protect herself and her children. However, the system that should have supported her ultimately fell short. While Jennifer was granted a temporary restraining order, the court did not make it permanent. This critical lapse in protection would later be identified as a pivotal moment where intervention could have altered the tragic outcome. The judge listened to Andre's promises that he would change. A friend who accompanied Jennifer to court recalled, "He was so convincing. He cried. He pledged to get help. And somehow, his performance carried more weight than years of Jennifer's suffering." Despite the setback, Jennifer persisted in her quest for safety and independence. In 2020, she finalized her divorce from Andre, a process described by those close to her as emotionally draining but necessary. The legal separation represented both an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of a harmful chapter and the start of Jennifer's journey toward rebuilding her life. What complicated Jennifer's situation was the contradictory position she found herself in after the divorce. While legally free from Andre, she sometimes provided financial support to him, a decision that puzzled many who didn't understand the complex psychology of abuse. She would say, "He's still my children's father," Jennifer's mother explained. She wanted the kids to have a relationship with him, and that meant sometimes helping him when he couldn't pay rent or buy food. This financial dynamic intersected with Andre's growing resentment. Unemployed and increasingly dependent on Jennifer's assistance, he found himself in a position that challenged his sense of masculinity and control. His former partner was thriving professionally while he struggled to find work. She had purchased a home while he lived in temporary accommodations. She was moving forward while he remained stuck. Andre couldn't stand seeing Jennifer succeed without him, one neighbor observed. Every step she took toward independence seemed to infuriate him more. The psychological aspects of their post-divorce relationship reflected a dangerous imbalance. Jennifer was attempting to establish healthy boundaries while still maintaining civil interactions for their children's sake. Andre, however, interpreted every boundary as rejection and every instance of Jennifer's self-sufficiency as a personal attack. This mindset is common in abusive relationships. The abuser views the victim's independence as a direct threat rather than a natural evolution. For Andre, Jennifer's refusal to reconcile wasn't just a romantic rejection. It was a challenge to his perceived ownership of her. Despite the obstacles, Jennifer remained steadfast in her determination to create a better life. She worked additional hours to secure her financial footing. She established new routines with her children that prioritized stability and emotional well-being. She began rebuilding social connections that had been severed during her marriage. She would tell me, "I can't let him win by giving up," her closest friend shared. Every time she achieved something new, the promotion at work, the townhouse, even just a peaceful weekend with the kids, she saw it as proof that she'd made the right decision to leave. What Jennifer couldn't have known was that her very success would become the catalyst for Andre's most destructive actions. Her steps toward freedom were simultaneously pushing him toward a breaking point that would have devastating consequences for everyone involved. In the months leading up to April 2022, the indicators of impending violence grew increasingly apparent to those who knew Jennifer and Andre. What began as occasional angry messages evolved into a persistent campaign of intimidation that signaled Andre's deteriorating state of mind. By early 2022, Andre's behavior had taken a dangerous turn. His phone calls to Jennifer occurred at all hours, often dozens in a single day. These weren't attempts at reconciliation, but rather assertions of control. He would demand to know her whereabouts, who she was with, and what she was doing, despite having no right to this information after their divorce. He called her 37 times in one night, Jennifer's sister later told investigators. When she finally answered at 3 a.m., because she was worried something had happened to the kids, he just wanted to know if she was dating someone new. These calls often featured dramatic emotional swings. Andre would begin conversations pleading for another chance, then abruptly shift to rage when Jennifer remained firm in her decision to move on. Particularly disturbing were his threats of self-harm, which he used as emotional leverage. "I might as well just end it all if you won't take me back," he told Jennifer during one call overheard by her friend. "You and the kids would be better off without me, anyway." These manipulative statements placed Jennifer in an impossible position. Forced to either placate him or worry, she might trigger a crisis. The harassment extended beyond phone calls. Andre began appearing uninvited at places he knew Jennifer would be: her workplace, the children's school, the grocery store she frequented. These coincidental encounters served a dual purpose: maintaining surveillance over Jennifer's activities and reminding her that he could access her at any time. Family members observed these concerning behaviors with growing alarm. Jennifer's mother recalled a particularly troubling incident at a birthday celebration for one of the children. Andre showed up, even though it wasn't his visitation day. When Jennifer asked him to leave, he grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks. He whispered something to her that made her face go white. She didn't tell us what he said until weeks later, that she'd regret choosing independence over him. This threat wasn't isolated. As Jennifer established her new life, Andre's statements became increasingly explicit. "You think you can just leave me and be happy? I won't let that happen," he told her in front of their daughter Anastasia. The teenager later reported this to her grandmother, adding that Dad's eyes looked different, empty somehow. The community surrounding Jennifer had also begun to recognize the danger. Neighbors at the Willow Woods townhomes complex noticed Andre's car parked on their street for hours, sometimes overnight. Jennifer's coworkers developed an informal system to walk her to her car after work. Friends created code words Jennifer could text if she felt unsafe and needed help. Despite these protective measures, Jennifer's daily existence had transformed into a continuous state of vigilance. She changed her routines frequently to avoid predictability. She installed additional locks on her doors and windows. She kept her children close, limiting their activities to places she considered secure. She was living like someone in a witness protection program, her closest friend explained. Always looking over her shoulder, always planning escape routes, always thinking about what might happen next. What made this situation particularly devastating was Jennifer's awareness that the danger was escalating, coupled with her limited options for protection. The restraining order that wasn't made permanent left her with few legal recourses. Police could only intervene after an actual crime occurred, a reactive approach that would prove tragically insufficient. In her final weeks, Jennifer confided to her sister that Andre had become fixated on her home purchase above all else. "He keeps saying I couldn't have done it without him, that I don't deserve it," she texted. "He said if he can't live there with us, then maybe nobody should." This statement, which seemed like bitter hyperbole at the time, would later be recognized as a direct expression of his intentions. Before we continue with what happened next, I want to ask you to engage with this video in a meaningful way. If you've ever witnessed concerning behaviors in a relationship, whether your own or someone else's, hit the like button now. Then share in the comments one thing you believe we as a society should do differently to protect people like Jennifer. Your insights might help someone recognize these situations before they turn deadly. Your engagement doesn't just help this video reach more people. It creates a community of awareness that could save lives. April 14th, 2022 began like many others for Jennifer Belloni. The morning routine at her Willow Woods Townhomes residence in North Lauderdale was predictable. Breakfast for the children, backpacks checked, lunches packed. At approximately 9 a.m., Jennifer and her 3 children were preparing to leave for school and work. It was a perfectly ordinary Thursday morning, until it wasn't. Unknown to Jennifer, Andre Anglin had positioned himself strategically near her home. This wasn't a chance encounter or a spontaneous act of violence. The evidence would later suggest that Andre had planned this moment meticulously, selecting the time when Jennifer would be vulnerable yet accessible. He knew her routines, her schedule, and exactly when to strike. Jennifer and her teenage daughter Anastasia stepped outside the townhouse while her 2 younger sons waited in the car. They had no reason to suspect danger, no indication that this mundane school day would end in tragedy. As they moved toward the vehicle, Andre emerged from his hiding spot. According to witnesses, Andre confronted Jennifer directly. No lengthy exchange of words occurred, just the sudden, devastating sound of gunfire. The first shot struck Jennifer, causing her to fall. What happened next demonstrated both the horror of the situation and the extraordinary courage of a daughter faced with unimaginable circumstances. Anastasia, witnessing her mother being shot, didn't run for safety. Instead, the teenager moved toward her mother in a desperate attempt to protect her. This act of bravery placed her directly in Andre's path. Witnesses reported that Andre then turned his weapon toward Anastasia, firing multiple times at the young girl who had tried to shield her mother. Inside the car, Jennifer's 2 younger sons witnessed everything. Though they escaped physical injury, the psychological impact of watching their father attack their mother and sister would be profound and lasting. In an instant, these children lost not only their mother and sister, but also any sense of security and normalcy in their world. The sound of gunshots resonated throughout the normally peaceful community. Neighbors emerged from their homes, some calling 911, while others attempted to process the violent scene unfolding before them. One resident later described it as the worst thing I've ever seen. A mother and daughter just lying there, while those little boys screamed from the car. First responders arrived within minutes, but the damage had been done. The front yard of the townhouse complex had become a crime scene. As medical personnel attended to Jennifer and Anastasia, police began the immediate process of securing the area and gathering witness statements. The suspect, however, was nowhere to be found. The Broward Sheriff's Office mobilized quickly, launching what would become an intensive 4-day manhunt for Andre Anglin. They issued public alerts across South Florida, distributed his photograph to news outlets, and established a tip line for information regarding his whereabouts. A reward was offered for details leading to his capture, reflecting the urgency authorities placed on apprehending him. "We are committing every available resource to locating this suspect," the sheriff stated during a press conference that afternoon. "He is considered armed and extremely dangerous. The public should not approach him, but should contact law enforcement immediately with any information." As news of the shooting spread throughout the community, so did fear. Parents kept children indoors, Businesses increased security, and neighbors checked on one another with increased frequency. The violence had shattered not just one family, but the sense of safety throughout North Lauderdale. For 4 days, residents lived with the knowledge that Andre Anglin remained at large. Each passing hour intensified both the police efforts and public anxiety. Schools in the area implemented additional security measures. Community gatherings were postponed. The atmosphere of fear was palpable as updates on the manhunt dominated local news. "We didn't know where he was or what he might do next," one neighbor from Willow Woods explained. Everyone was looking over their shoulder, wondering if he might return to the area. The investigators pursued multiple leads, following potential sightings and examining Andre's known connections throughout Broward County. Digital evidence, including cell phone records and credit card transactions, provided some direction, but Andre proved difficult to locate. His ability to avoid capture only added to the community's growing unease as the search entered its 4th day with no resolution in sight. The search for Andre Anglin came to an unexpected conclusion on April 18, 2022, 4 days after the shooting. Law enforcement located him at a Circle K gas station in Fort Lauderdale, approximately 7 miles from the scene of the crime. What might have been the beginning of justice for Jennifer and Anastasia instead became the final act in Andre's violent narrative. When deputies approached the gas station, Andre retreated to the restroom. Before officers could apprehend him, he used a firearm to take his own life. The self-inflicted gunshot wound ended any possibility of legal proceedings against him. For the families seeking answers and accountability, this outcome denied them the closure that a trial might have provided. "We wanted him to face what he did," Jennifer's brother told reporters. "Now, we'll never get the chance to look him in the eye and ask why." This case represents more than an isolated tragedy. It exposes significant gaps in how our society handles domestic violence. The failure to make Jennifer's restraining order permanent in 2018 exemplifies a common systemic shortcoming. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, only about 20% of restraining orders lead to arrests when violated, and judges often decline to make temporary orders permanent without evidence of physical violence, despite research showing that emotional abuse frequently escalates to physical violence. Had the legal system recognized the danger Andre posed based on his pattern of controlling behavior, rather than waiting for violence to occur, Jennifer might have received the protection she desperately needed. The court's decision not to extend her restraining order left her vulnerable during the critical period when she was establishing independence. Statistically, the most dangerous time for abuse survivors. When victims take steps toward freedom, the risk of homicide increases by 75%, explains Dr. Jane Wilson, a researcher specializing in domestic violence. The legal system often fails to recognize that the moment of separation requires the most robust protection, not the least. Beyond legal protections, the case highlights the need for more comprehensive monitoring of individuals with histories of domestic abuse. Andre's escalating threats, employment issues, and emotional instability presented a clear pattern that, if properly tracked by coordinated agencies, might have triggered intervention before the situation became fatal. In communities with integrated response teams, where law enforcement collaborates with social services, mental health professionals, and victim advocates, domestic violence homicides have decreased by up to 40%. Such approaches allow for early identification of high-risk situations and immediate action rather than waiting for violence to occur. What we need is prevention, not just reaction, notes former prosecutor Harriet Sander, who specializes in domestic violence cases. When someone shows Andre's pattern of behavior, multiple agencies should be notified and involved immediately. The focus should be on protecting potential victims, not just punishing offenders after harm occurs. For Jennifer's surviving sons, the aftermath extends far beyond the 4-day manhunt. These children now face the dual trauma of losing their mother and sister while also processing their father's role in the tragedy and his subsequent suicide. Studies indicate that children who witness domestic homicide experience profound psychological effects, including PTSD, depression, anxiety, and attachment disorders. Without specialized long-term support, these impacts can extend into adulthood. Community response plays a critical role in addressing these needs. In the weeks following the shooting, the North Lauderdale community established a support fund for Jennifer's sons. Local counseling services offered trauma-informed therapy, and school officials implemented specialized support systems for the children's eventual return to education. However, these reactionary measures, while necessary, underscore the most painful truth about domestic violence homicides. They are often preventable. Jennifer did everything right according to conventional wisdom. She left the relationship, sought legal protection, established independent housing, and maintained employment. Yet the systems designed to protect her failed at multiple points. The National Domestic Violence Hotline reports that on average, victims attempt to leave abusive relationships 7 times before succeeding permanently. Each attempt increases risk, yet support systems rarely account for this escalating danger. For victims like Jennifer, resources exist but remain fragmented and difficult to navigate during crisis. Here's what knowledgeable experts now emphasize. Effective intervention requires understanding that domestic violence is rarely a private family matter, but rather a public safety issue requiring comprehensive response. Communities with coordinated approaches, where hospitals, law enforcement, courts, and social services share information and work collaboratively, demonstrate significantly higher rates of victim safety. When I review cases like Jennifer's, explains forensic psychologist Dr. Robert Hamilton, I consistently see missed opportunities where information existed but wasn't shared between agencies. Police knew about previous incidents, family members observed threatening behavior, and courts had documentation of his control tactics, but no one connected these dots until it was too late. For viewers watching this who may recognize similar patterns in their own relationships or those of loved ones, please know that resources exist. The National Domestic Violence Hotline provides 24/7 support at 1-800-799-7233. Local shelters offer emergency housing, legal advocacy programs, provide assistance with protective orders, and specialized counselors can help develop safety plans tailored to individual circumstances. Before concluding Jennifer's story, I have one final request. If this video has impacted you, if you've learned something about the reality of domestic violence or the gaps in our protection systems, please share it now. Your share might reach someone who needs this information, someone who doesn't recognize the danger they're in, or someone who has the power to change these systems. By sharing this video, you become part of the solution, part of Jennifer's legacy of change. Jennifer Baloney's life represented determination and hope in the face of extraordinary challenges. Her purchase of that townhouse wasn't just about property ownership. It symbolized her belief in possibility, in second chances, in a future where she and her children could thrive independently. That future was stolen not just by one man's actions, but by the collective failure of systems designed to protect vulnerable individuals. The most meaningful tribute to Jennifer and Anastasia isn't found in memorial services or community vigils, though these have their place. True honor comes through transforming the systems that failed them, through demanding better responses to domestic violence, and through ensuring their story leads to tangible changes in how we approach protection, prevention, and justice for victims. Their legacy should be measured not in remembrance alone, but in the lives saved through improved response to domestic violence.